welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend just a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
And Ted is off doing what Teds do when they aren't recording Ted sorts of shows. Ted is don't worry, Ted's still with us. He's just out doing stuff. So Ted, we'll make sure we save your spot and keep it warm, but the show must go on, right, Grant?
Always.
So I think of it as just kind of a show that, Ted and I guess because our times are a little more lined up with us in the, being in the United States and just an hour different. We do some shows without you sometimes, so this is just us making up for, you and I just making up for those shows, right?
If that's the way you want to look at it, that's fine. We all know the real reason that you and Ted do the shows without us. You're just trying to say, right, there we go, we've had enough of Grant. Let's just get on with it.
Well, Ted and I may have had enough of Grant, but you know who hasn't?
The patrons.
I know! And so it's because of the patrons that Grant gets to stay around and hang out with us. So we all know that, Grant, you're a fan favorite of the patrons. So if you want to become a patron, join at whatever level you feel comfortable. Help support the show, keep the lights on, hosting fees, giveaways for the community, swag that we put out every year. Our Patreon address is right here. It's patreon.com/cardtalk2018. And so you can join at any level you wish, any level you feel comfortable, and we'd love to have you. Right now, as of the recording of this show, we have 24 patrons. That's awesome. That's about 24 more than I ever expected when I first started the show. So thank you to all the patrons that have helped make this show continue on in its awesomeness. And that would be Dominic, Joseph, Phil, Lou, Sean, David, Robert, Mike, Daniel, Kyle, Jason, Justin, Russ, Matt, Joshua, Jake, James, Vardane, Carl, Niall, Joe, Peter, Edmund, and Alex. So thank you guys for being awesome and joining the ranks of the patrons. So it's not uncomfortable yet, Grant.
No, so please, if you want to make David as uncomfortable as me and Ted do, subscribe for $1 a month for just 1 month, so we have a massive long list. Let's see if we can hit 50 people to get David to pass out. And maybe we need to get him a little magic item to help him get back to his feet.
Yeah, that leads us right into the card for today. So, Grant, why don't you talk about the card that we chose to talk about?
Well, we are talking about the magic ring from the Crossings of Porthos. It is an artifact, it's an item, and it's a ring. It costs 2 resources, and it's attached to a hero. Limit 1 per hero and 1 per deck. Exhaust magic ring and raise your threat by 1 to 2. Choose 1. Heal 1 damage from attached hero. Add 1 resource to attached hero's pool. Already attached hero.
Yeah, so before we get into this, Grant and I and Ted all got together and we were like, what can we do to kind of, talk about cards from the, that ring in 2020, that start off 2021. And, we really thought that maybe talking about healing cards with all the stuff going on in the world with, health being maybe at everybody's forefront, right now, or the forefront of everybody's mind. We thought, why not talk about healing cards? But then Grant and I are recording this block of shows together. And, sometimes we just feel like there's only so much that we can talk about when we talk about healing cards, and then the magic ring shows up, and yes, it's a healing card, but Grant, it's so much more. So
that it is.
Grant, why don't you talk about it?
This is basically a miniature version of the contract, Grey Wanderer. It gives you healing, it gives you action advantage, and it gives you resource generation. Each one of those abilities is on the Grey Wanderer contract. The only difference is they up the healing to 3, I think it is.
Yeah, heal 3, yep.
You then got add 2 resources and ready. This is a
Right.
miniature version of that.
I know. I never thought about how alike in structure, and you get to choose two with the Grey Wanderer
Yeah.
contract. So, that helps out. I guess that's the way to make a one hero deck sing, right? But I guess it would be strange to start a chunk of shows that deal with healing and not talk about the healing first. And so I will say that this card I typically don't use necessarily to heal, although I do sometimes. Like I think that the other two abilities are the ones that I am using more than I'm using the healing in this deck. What about you? What are you using this card for?
In all honesty, I'm using it for, if I'm using it at all, it's either for a ready or for a resource.
Right.
Because generally by the time this card comes out, I've got healing on board.
Right. Or you don't need healing, right? Like,
Yeah.
there are some scenarios where you just don't need healing. You have a big bulky defender, and so you don't need healing. Like you have Baragond with a Gondorian shield, or even if you're playing with a limited card pool and you have Denethor with a Gondorian shield, that's usually enough. Or maybe you have Spirit Dying out. Like this, then you have defense taken care of. Spirit Dying can take a swing from just about every enemy in play, or every enemy in the game, and still live to tell the tale. So, it's so sometimes you don't need the healing, and the fact that you have an attachment that can do other things than just heal, that is very promising to me. And it's not restricted. It's an artifact. Not that artifacts mean anything, except for some reason the Ring of Bear here came to mind, because I do like playing the Ring of Bear here every once in a while. It's an item, so you can Long Lake Trader it around. Not that matters too much. Ring, that's not a huge deal. But the limit is that it's one per hero and one per deck. So when you're playing solo, the chances of you drawing this are, greatly reduced. We'll say that. So looking at that limitation, Grant, what pops to mind there?
You need a way, if you're looking for this card in general, you need a way to fish it out, whether that is with Master of the Forge, gather information, are both viable ways to get this card potentially operational. But like I say, I'm mainly using this card for readying and resource acceleration. So it's also the fact that you've got to raise your threats. So that's another limitation that you've got to think about. Is it worth me playing this over something that, if it's going to make me engage enemies over a longer period of time?
Yeah, and I mean, I know it's going to come as a big shock to you, but this slots really nicely into, like a Grey Wanderer deck, which I love the Grey Wanderer. It seems like I accidentally build Grey Wanderer decks all the freaking time. Like, oh, what if I take out what if I do, and then all of a sudden it's there, so, this can go on Hero Gwaihir because it's not restricted, right? Gwaihir can wear this magic ring, but it's not reliable every game you play because because there's only one of them in your deck. You can't pull it out, and then you have to go through all the fetching techniques that you were talking about. But I think that this is one of those cards that doesn't, if it comes out, if you have it, if you find it somehow, Heed the Dream is another one of those that you can go and find this card with. What's the did you talk about the Istari Word of Command? Did you talk
Word
about
of Command?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways you can go dig for specific cards if you need to. But this is one of those cards that I feel you don't build a deck around, but when it comes out, it just helps. It's just a help card. It's not a win more card because it doesn't really do much to win. Like, it just helps. it's another way to ready that, you may have 3 unexpected courages in your deck, and then, well, let me put the magic ring, because if I put the magic ring in here, now I can ready, or I could add a resource if I need to, or, if I need to, I can heal 1 damage. Now, the big issue in terms of the healing part of this is that it has to be on the hero that it's attached to. So, but again, and you, Ted, and I talk about this all the time, you're likely to put your readies onto a defending character. And the defending characters are the ones that you're going to want to heal most often, unless you have some sort of, one of those heroes, that, like Barivore, that's not defending, but if you lose Barivore, you're losing card draw and stuff like that. But, like in general, you want your defenders to be ready, and you want them to be healed up. So I think that this fits really well into that sort of thing, because it can do double, triple duty, and then you also, like you were saying, you don't have to, because it costs threat, you're spending threat, you don't also have to use it if you don't want to.
Yeah. It's definitely one of those situational cards that, yes, can make a big difference in a game, but it's also, you've got to choose when's the right time to play it, because of the fact of that threat gain. So if you're in a quest where you've got a lot of enemies that come down at lower threat, you may not want to use the magic ring unless it's a dire emergency, because that one time that you use the magic ring, out of that you could have 6 or 7 enemies come down to engage you.
Yeah, right. I mean, and that's kind of the beauty of this thing, is that you can bring it out. It's neutral, which I love. Neutral cards like this I love, because then you're not stuck, saving up for it in one particular sphere. So it's out of sphere healing, if that's what you're using it for. You can pay for it. So like your Council of the Wise deck, you can use this in a Council of the Wise deck, and that's great because it gives you another option, and it's it may fit really nicely in there, since it's limit 1 per hero, limit 1 per deck. It fits really nicely into a Bond of Friendship deck, because you have 1 hero from each sphere. So like there's a lot of use cases. Of course, it fits into the Burglar's Turn, but I don't know if you're going to put this in a Burglar's Turn deck necessarily, but I don't know, maybe you would.
It's a good card to put in a Burglar's Turn deck, because it's a fact of you got more chance of pulling it out that way.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're going to put it into into the loot deck, right? In the Burglar's Turn, and then
that's what I'm saying.
It's an attachment that gives you more options, which is nice, because if you're not putting attachments in your main deck, then at least you have an attachment. If this comes out, you're like, oh, this gives me lots of options. Like you have kind of an unexpected courage, or you have a resource generator if you need it or something. So yeah, is that what you were saying?
Well, no, it was more the fact of you have 14 cards in your loot deck. That means you have 14 chances to pull out this card. Whereas if it's stuck in your deck, you've got, a 1 in 49 chance of drawing it?
Right.
If you're running a 50 card deck.
Right.
It's 1 in 50. So you've got more chance of pulling it out when you need it in a Burglar's Turn deck than you have in a standard deck if you're not using shenanigans.
Right. I mean, I guess the bigger question about cards, especially cards that are just, 1 per deck, do they... there's a couple of cards that are 1 per deck. The side quest, and, there's a couple of side quests that just limit 1 per deck. And then the red arrow and the black arrow, I think both are limited 1 per deck. So, I guess by construct, because they're limited 1 per deck, you can't rely on them. But I feel like, especially this card, it just helps smooth over the performance of your deck. I'm not going to be upset if I draw a magic ring and then put it onto anybody. again, I think it's going to go on my healer, or it's going to go on to Tactics Bilbo is a great option for this. Argalad is a great option. Spirit Aragorn is a great option because all of those heroes you want to use their ability, and then anything that has an ability, any heroes that have an ability, Barivor, Eleanor, that exhaust, and then MOTK Furial, to be able to, because she's not a horrible defender, so she's got 2 defense, 3 willpower. So like any hero that has a exhaust thing, Messenger of the King Gamling, just there's definitely some potential there with Magic Ring, but again, it's not reliable. It's cost 2, so you can't bring it out with the Grey Wanderer contract. The Grey Wanderer contract, you need to bring out something that costs 1 or exactly 1. You can't bring out 0 cost things. You can't bring out 2 cost things. So it's fine. You can reduce the cost of this, like the Erebor Toymaker brings its cost down to 0. So there's things you can do with it, but overall, I don't know. Like you said, I think I'm not using this to heal. I'm probably using it as a ready or maybe a resource.
Yep.
Just to put a bow on this, if you draw this in your opening hand, and again, that's it's going to be the percentages of you drawing this in an opening hand is not great because there's only one of. But if you draw this in your opening hand, I'm not upset that I draw this in my opening hand, especially in like a Bond of Friendship deck, because again, it can count as a, I can put it into play immediately. I can choose which resources I want to play it, and I can put it on my defender or maybe my attacker if it's one of those scenarios. So I just think it's all right. It's a great card to see. I'm curious why they thought to limit this as one per deck. It's not unique, so if you're playing Magic Rings around the table, every deck can have a Magic Ring on it. But
I think that's why it's limited to 1 per deck, because it's a Magic Ring.
Right.
In looking at it from a lore perspective, I think that's why they've done it.
Yeah, I mean, right, just and that's one of the beauties of this game, right? Is that Caleb and MJ and all the guys that and all the people that have created the game, they wanted to make sure that they're true to the lore, and so Gandalf, J.R. Tolkien didn't believe necessarily in overt magic. His thing was the magic of the lands, that there is a kind of an innate magic in stuff. He didn't necessarily love the overt wave your wand sort of magic. And of course he had some of that with Gandalf and things like that, but even then it was more subtle. So I think that the game developers and designers knew that you can't have everything being magic. So I think that's maybe unconsciously so, maybe it's just a call out to that there's not magic everywhere in Middle Earth. It's just kind of magical. So what else is there about this?
I like the artwork on this.
I do too.
It's a nice, simple design. I like how they've got that aquamarine blue going through the band of the ring as well as being the gem itself.
Yes, and it's kind of also reflected on the pedestal, and of course it's an elvish pedestal that it's on, or
yep.
I would assume it's not a table because that would be a really small table if it were on that, but I wonder in Sindarin what that says, or if it says anything, or if the artist is Lucas Durham. I wonder if it just started making funny shapes or something.
Well, no, it definitely looks like proper elvish script. So if anybody knows Sildarin, please feel free to
Yeah.
message me below. But I also like the flavor text. In Eregion, long ago, many elven rings were made, magic rings, as you call them, and they were, of course, of various kinds.
Right. And that was at the beginning. I forget
Yep.
exactly when he said that. Were they in Rivendell talking about, like, in the Council of Elrond talking about all this
No,
stuff?
I think that's where he's talking to Frodo right at the beginning, where he's giving them the history.
Okay. Maybe.
It's been a little while since I've read the books,
This is where
so
we need Eric Shell. Remember Eric Shell came on the show when we were talking about the about Open the Gates from the fan created
yeah,
thing, and he said he went through every single flavor text on every single card and
yeah.
highlighted where it went. That was nuts. Eric, if you're listening, tell us where this come from.
Um, but like I say, I like the um, I like the overall design of the card, and I like the fact that it's um, the flavor text for it. I
Yeah,
think they've done a spot on job with this card.
sure. Well, should we ring this guy?
Yeah,
Should we ring the ring?
yep. Let's ring the ring.
It's not the one ring, but it's definitely a ring. So, for anybody who has forgotten or doesn't know or has never tuned into an episode before, we have a highly scientific yet arbitrary system where we ring a card on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is the one card in the game to rule them all, and 10 is the card that we throw back into the fiery chasm from whence it was made. So, Grant, I think you went first in the last episode, so I will do this on this episode, and I will say that I really love this card because it gives you an alternative way, like it sort of commoditizes. I don't know, it monetizes threat. Like you're spending threat to do something else. So I think that helps. There, of course, there's cards that do that. Boromir is the primary example where you spend threat to do an action, to ready and things like that. But I think that cards that put threat as something you can spend to get something is something that I appreciate, because it's not just, you're not just spending. Yes, you're spending the resources to put it out there, but then you can get those resources back through its action if you want, but you can spend threat. You're not spending resources, so I just like that. It helps. Like I said in the body of the show, it just helps smooth the game. Like it's not a game changer, but it helps smooth the game. So I think that this card is. I'm going to have to give this card a 4. It's a little bit better than average, and I put it into some of my decks. It doesn't make it into all my decks, but I definitely use this card, and it fits into some archetypes really well. So that's what I'm going to say. Grant, what do you think?
Okay, well, just for your bit of knowledge, I've just went and wrote in what I thought David was going to give this, and I got it spot on.
Of course. Grant, we've been doing this for 3 years. You're gonna know exactly what I'm gonna.
So for me, I'm also going to give it a rating of 4 because it's a nice card to have. It's a good toolbox utility card. So I'm also giving.
Okay, well there you have it. The magic ring just got ringed, and so join us again on another episode of Card Talk as we talk about more cards from the game. Have a great day, everybody.
Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube. And there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? Feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.